22 Suzanne Spencer just got outside of the courtroom, and Suzanne, Swoveland's mother, was one of the first people to see her son after he was shot.
She was, Rick. I can't imagine what Ashley Kinder went through. When she walked outside, she saw her son lying on the pavement. She knew something wasn't right after her daughter ran inside and said, "My brother." So she went outside, lifted up his shirt, and saw that he had been shot. Now, she was just one of several other witnesses that the jury heard from, including first responding witnesses, a South Bend police officer, a man who pulled up the house next door to where Swoveland was shot, as well as many other Metro homicide witnesses. Jurors saw photos of Swoveland's body and the bullet wound in his chest. A few wiped away tears, while Griffin looked around the room several times, looked at jurors, appeared to watch Swoveland's mother as she testified. It also did appear to look as if he looked at the photos of Swoveland's body during the video. I was behind him, so I couldn't see it as well. But that's also when the pathologist ruled Swoveland's manner of death to be a homicide. So really the whole debate about this is who fired shots first. Now, the state alleges Griffin shot at a member of the rival gang first, and that bullet instead hit John Swoveland Jr., and that's really where the heart of this argument lies. And he was 3 football fields away from John Swoveland Jr., so it shows you the travel distance of that bullet. Now, the Griffin's attorney said just because someone died from this, though, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a murder. Rick? That's what the crux of this case is, Rick. Who fired the shots that ultimately ended John Swoveland Jr.'s life? Now, a 12-year-old witness went on the stand today saying he saw Robert Griffin and another man pull guns out and start shooting. That's when he started running, and he said the men with the guns started running too. Tearful testimony from one of several middle schoolers who witnessed a shooting on Campeau Street. The then 5th grader later identified Robert Griffin as the shooter after seeing his picture on the news. The child says Griffin was shooting straight in the direction Larry Bobbitt was running. 16-year-old Bobbitt took the stand saying he went to Coquillard Park looking to fight Malcolm Buchanan, another suspect linked to Swoveland's death. That's when he saw Robert Griffin with a gun pointed at him, according to testimony. "I seen the first shot and it went past me. That's when I turned around and started running," says Larry Bobbitt. Bobbitt says he's sure it was Griffin. Now, another witness this afternoon, Daniel Williams, said Griffin was actually the second person to shoot at Bobbitt, but Williams admitted not to telling the truth at first to police, saying that he was scared. He's since corrected his story, is what he told the lawyers again today. Now, again, all of this comes down to who fired those shots that ultimately ended John Swoveland Jr.'s life.
Now, Suzanne, cameras are not allowed in the courtroom, but you've been watching Griffin and the jury closely. How are they reacting to this testimony?
When the 12-year-old boy walked in the courtroom today, Rick, he was sobbing, and he continued to cry for quite some time as the lawyers asked him questions. And that was really the time when a lot of people, all eyes on Griffin. You saw him kind of put his head down and didn't really react much other than that, than placing his head down. But I haven't really seen much other reaction from him throughout the past couple days of this trial. Now, the jurors, I would say the most difficult thing that I've seen just from sitting in the courtroom was during John Swoveland Jr.'s his mom's testimony, yesterday. Now, that 2-year-old, again, they showed pictures of the dead 2-year-old from the autopsy, and they asked her to identify him, and I would say that's when many of the jurors were wiping away tears, and that was probably one of the more emotional things that I got to see in the courtroom. Yeah,
extremely emotional. Suzanne Spencer live in South Bend for us. Suzanne, thank you.
There are 2 stories here, Rick. In one of the stories, Quentin Ferguson told the jurors that Griffin had told him that he shot a bullet that killed John Swoveland Jr. in court testimony today. A separate time, he told Rashu Smith that one of those bullets hit a baby, according to court testimony again today. Now, both of those men were in jail with Griffin during the past year. Ferguson said he had known Griffin for quite some time, many years before all of this happened. Ferguson is actually in jail, though, on other unrelated charges. He admitted, though, he's trying to provide information to help his own situation. Ferguson also claims Griffin told him he was the second one to shoot that day on Coquillard Park, that Tyree Bradbury, another suspect in this case, was the first one to shoot. Rashu Smith says Griffin told him that he used a revolver at the shooting. That revolver is really a key piece of evidence in that case. Again, that revolver and the white do-rag are both key pieces of evidence in this case that the prosecution is trying to prove is linked to Robert Griffin.
Now, Suzanne, you just heard from Robert Griffin, the man accused, in a recorded interview.
We did, Rick. Now, Griffin told police when he actually was not reaching for a gun, which is what quite a bit of court testimony has said. He was actually reaching for his cell phone. Now, he also admitted in that interview, which was recorded back in April of last year, that he was wearing a white do-rag. Again, like I said, that white do-rag being a key piece of evidence. Yesterday, a 12-year-old boy who witnessed the shooting said that he saw someone at the park with that white do-rag. But again, lots of people here who have been witnesses in this trial have been giving contradicting stories about what happened the day at the park. So I'll be detailing some of those contradictions coming up at 6.
All right, Suzanne Spencer live in South Bend for us. Suzanne, thank you. T22 Suzanne Spencer has been following this case all week long. And Suzanne, Griffin is sticking by what he said in that pre-recorded interview.
He told the judge, Rick, that he is not going to change his statement, that he did not shoot. Now, you'll remember in a pre-recorded interview, Griffin also told them he didn't even have a gun, that when he reached into his pocket, he was reaching for a cell phone. He's the first of 8 suspects linked to Swoveland's death. Another suspect, Tyree Bradbury, chose not to testify today because he has charges in this case. He has Fifth Amendment rights. Police say Bradbury, Therese Buchanan, and Robert Griffin had guns that day, but that Bradbury wasn't the one shooting. Since day one, though, jurors have heard several different stories of what happened, including who shot the bullet that killed John Swoveland Jr. Now, a key piece of evidence in this case is a silver revolver. A bullet from that gun did kill John Swoveland Jr. So the prosecution here, they're trying to prove that a bullet from that gun it did indeed come from Griffin. The defense is trying to prove that Griffin did not fire a bullet from that gun.
Now, Suzanne, the jury will get this case tomorrow, right?
They will. They'll get it tomorrow morning. We'll begin with closing statements, in the morning, and then the jury will begin deliberating. We're not sure always, as with any jury, how long that will take. But another key piece of information we learned this afternoon, the chief witness in this case, who is one that gathers all the information, puts it together in the charging documents, said that one person admitted to him that he shot and killed Swoveland. So we'll detail that account for you coming up at 6 o'clock. Rick?
All right, Suzanne Spencer live in South Bend tonight. Suzanne, thank you.
Courthouse awaiting that verdict. Suzanne, what do you know?
We just learned minutes ago, Jennifer, Rick, that there is a verdict in the Robert Griffin case. Now, of course, we don't know this verdict as of yet. We're told that they're still calling lawyers into the courtroom now, so we'll know within the hour whether or not Robert Griffin is guilty or not guilty of these 2 charges. Now, earlier, defense and prosecutors had very emotional testimony. They saw pictures of John Swoveland Jr. on the autopsy table and were reminded that this jury and this entire case is about a dead 2-year-old boy. Griffin's attorney reminded jurors, though, it's not their duty to base their decisions in this case on their emotions. All of this comes down to what the jury believes, and we'll be able to figure out what they're believing coming up here within the hour. Kelly Stavsinski is in the courtroom right now waiting for the lawyers to arrive, so we will learn the verdict about Robert Griffin coming up soon. Again, he is facing murder and attempted murder charges in the death of 2-year-old John Swoveland Jr. Rick, Jennifer?
Inside the courtroom for every step of this. She's outside the courthouse right now. Suzanne?
As the judge read the verdict, Jennifer and Rick, one juror sobbed, at least one of them. The judge told the jurors she knew this would be a difficult case and the charges could not be more serious. And now Robert Griffin is facing up to 115 years because of it. It's been almost 1 year since the stray bullet hit and killed Swoveland. He was playing outside with his older sister when he was gunned down. Police say that bullet came from a fight between 2 rival gangs. That bullet traveled almost 4 football fields. I just spoke with John Swoveland Jr.'s great aunt, who's been there through this trial, and shared her thoughts about this verdict.
They can see theirs. They can go visit them. We don't have him. And his mother kept saying today, we're just going to leave it to God. We're going to go to God. We're going to leave it to God. I really wanted to turn to her and say, you know what? Our baby is already with God. That's my thought. So I am just so glad that everything went the way it did.
Any case involving the death of a child is going to be tough. A case where the intent is not just painted on the wall for everybody to see, that's tough. The jury, I think, took a long time to consider that and weigh the evidence and sort it out and come to the conclusion.
Now, that video you just saw, that was, of course, Robert Griffin getting into the elevator right after hearing of the 2 guilty verdicts. He also is facing up to 115 years in prison. His sentencing date is set for March 19th. I also spoke with the lead investigator in this case who said anytime you deal with a child in any of these cases is always a difficult one. We'll have that full story for you coming up at 11. Rick and Jennifer.